Hello, good afternoon. Good morning. Good afternoon, sister. Can you hear me? Thank you very much for being our speaker here this afternoon. Good afternoon, Cindy. Thank you very much for being our speaker this afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm good. I'm fine.
Nice to meet you. This is the first time we will have this.
Nice to meet you too, sir.
Oh yeah, we have also the vice dean of Faculty of Humanities. Bukan pada unit kata Mama Surya Nurapati.
Hi, hello.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, thank you for joining us. How should I call you? Professor Advinsula?
Yeah, that would do.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Professor Advinsula and Professor Mumbai. And from Eastern Fasa State University. Did I pronounce it correctly? Eastern Visayas State University,
Yes,
Philippines.
that's correct.
Yes, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Good afternoon. The head of English Literature Study, Universities of Diponegoro. Our outstanding speakers and all of participants that join in our events today. We are truly honored to have the presence of Head of English Literature Study Program, Dr. Oktifa Hari Chandra, Magister of Humaniora, and of course, outstanding invited speaker, Ma Jenny C. Advincula, PhD, and Christine Dang as Mumbai, PhD, from Eastern Visayas State University of Philippines, as well as our moderator, Dr. Ratna Wulandari, Magister of Art, from Diponegoro University. Thank you everyone for joining our visiting lecture today with the topic of visiting lecture on language, literature, and culture. With our first topic, Nature's Loud Whisper, a poetic plea to fill the hill by Ma Jenny C. Advincula, PhD, and our second topic about cultural intelligence in the classroom, Navigating Diversity Through Language by Christine Down as Mumbai, PhD, an event hosted by the Faculty of Humanities, University of Diponegoro. And I am Hanifah Azahra Lutfi as the Master of Ceremony for today's event. I will briefly convey our agenda this afternoon. First is the opening by the MC. Second, a welcoming speech by the head of English department. A vice dean and our and speech by the vice dean. First, Ma'am Eta, followed with the main presentation of our topic today by our speaker, Ma Jenny C. Advincula, PhD, and Christine Down as Mumbai, PhD, which will be guided by our moderator, Dr. Ratna Wulandari, Magister of Art, followed by Q&A session. Okay, first, let's start our first agenda. There is speech from the head of the Vice Dean of the Faculty of Humanity, University of Diponegoro, Etta Pharmacelia, Magister of Humaniora, PhD. The
Yeah.
screen is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Hanifah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. On the behalf of the Dean of Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Diponegoro, I would like to warmly welcome our two speakers today, Professor Majeni C. Advinsula, PhD, and Professor Christina Don S. Mombe, PhD from Eastern Visayas State University, the Philippines. Thank you for agreeing to join us in giving lectures today in the Visiting Professors on Language, Literature, and Culture. So thank you for the English department, the head of the English department, Dr. Roktiva Heri Chandra, and also the moderator, Dr. Ratna Wulandari MA, and also all of the lecturers and students who have organized the series of lectures today. So we have done the first session and second session this morning. I'm sorry I couldn't join the first and second session, and we continue with the collaboration here in session 3 and session 4. So visiting professor is part of the programs of the Universitas Diponegoro. So we have world-class university program consisting of a number and varied programs, including collaboration in giving lecture and also conducting research. We invite scholars from across the globe to join us with scholars from Diponegoro, Universitas Diponegoro, to have discussion, conducting research together, and also to do some visiting lecture like this. So it's interesting topic that we are going. There are interesting topics that we are going to discuss today. That the two professors from Eastern Visayas State University going to share with our students and also our lecturers today. The topic from my Professor Jenny Advinsula is Nature's Loud Whisper, a poetic plea to feel and heal. And from Professor Mombe, Cultural Intelligence in Classroom, Navigating Diversity Through Language. So by reading the title, I feel excited to know more about this. So it's a discussion on literature and also on language and how poetry can how can we feel the poetry. We know our students learn poetry as well here in Universitas Diponegoro, and how poetry can heal. So it's interesting. It's sort of kind of medicine or something. Yeah, so let's start the professor. Let's learn together. And again, thank you again for our speakers today and also for the English department for organizing this visiting professor. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much for your warm opening remark, Mamata. And now we move to our second agenda. Before that, we proceed our main agenda. Let's take a moment to capture this wonderful occasion with a group photo first. And if your camera is still off, please kindly turn it on now. All right, let's get ready for the first slide. I will start the count for 3, 2, 1. Okay. Maybe one more. Okay, ready? 1, 2, and 3. Okay, thank you for your participation. Now, everyone, we have reached the core of our event that has been anticipated before, which is the delivery of our topic by our outstanding speakers today, Majeni C. Advincula, PhD, and Christine Down as Mumbai, PhD, which will be guided by our amazing moderator, Dr. Ratna Wulandari, Magister of Art. Before that, let me introduce our amazing moderator first, Dr. Ratna Wulandari, Magister of Arts. She was an undergraduate at English Department, Faculty of Humanities, University of Diponegoro, and had a Magister of American Study on American Literature at Gadjah Mada University, and had a PhD of Literature at the Faculty of Humanities in Gadjah Mada University. Okay, over to you, Ma'am Ratna.
Thank you, Hanifah, for the opportunity given. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, Head of Vice Dean of Academic Affairs, Ibu Eta Farmacelia Nurul Hadi, PhD. The Head of English Department, Dr. Opifa Herichandra. And two speakers from the Philippines, Ibu Majeni C. Advincula, PhD, and also Ibu Christine Dawn S. Mumbai, PhD. Welcome to the seminar. We are very glad to having you here. And okay, we are going to have a more collaboration with this seminar. And for this session too, we have we're going to introduce first. First is Professor Majeni C. Advincula, PhD. She is English faculty member for Department of Languages and Literature from Eastern Visayas State University, the Philippines. Okay, I'm going to share the bio notes from Professor Advincula. Can I call you Professor Advincula? Is it? Or Ibu Jenny?
Anything will do. Your
Okay,
pleasure,
thank
ma'am.
you. Okay, thank you. I'm going to call you Ibu Advincula, right? Right, this is the bio notes of Ibu Advincula, right? I'm sure. Dr. Majeni C. Advincula is an English faculty member of the Department of Languages and Literature at Eastern Visayas State University, Tacloban, Philippines. She holds a Doctor of Philosophy in English with a concentration in literature, a Master of Arts in Instruction and Supervision with a major in Language Instruction, and a Master of Public Resource Management. She completed her undergraduate degree in Communication Arts, majoring in Literature at the University of the Philippines in the Visayas, specifically at Tacloban College. Her areas of expertise include language, literature, cooperative governance, and strategic planning. Her research interests span language and literature, with a special focus on the environment, gender, digitalization, mental health, and artificial intelligence, as well as social culture and arts, cooperative, youth, and community works. Dr. Advincula actively contributes to academic and community development through her multidisciplinary approach that integrates cooperative governance and educational innovation. And as lecturers and researchers, also she has already published in Scopus and other international peer-reviewed journals. Okay, and today she will deliver her presentation about nature and literature, with the theme Nature's Loud Whisper, poetically to feel and heal. And I also agree with Ibu Eta that poetry can heal, and especially nature can heal. I totally agree with that. Yeah, and I believe this will be a very, very insightful and enriching discussion, because last few weeks we also have a discussion about nature and literature. So I think this is very connected each other, and we agree that, of course, nature, poetry can heal everybody. Okay, we also invite participants to actively engage this seminar through some question which can be posted in that column after the second speaker deliver the presentation. Now, without any further ado, time is for Dr. Edwin Kola. Dr. Edwin Kola, time is yours.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And indeed, I'm happy to share with you the thought that poetry is therapeutic. It really heals. Okay, so may I start sharing with you my slides? Am I audible?
Yes, absolutely. We can hear your voice clearly.
Okay, and I hope that my presentation is clearly seen.
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay. So once again, good afternoon, everyone. I will be sharing with you something that I am passionate about, and I would like to invite many to join me in this journey. And so, given the privilege to participate in discussions, I would always want to share about eco-criticism, how the relationship of literature and men. So today, I invite you to listen not just to me, but to the earth, to the forests, rain, and even to silence itself, the waves, the winds, to nature's loud whisper. Okay, so the title of my talk, Nature's Loud Whisper, a poetic plea to feel and heal, comes from an awareness that nature is always speaking, gently at times, but we know furiously at others. Through poetry, we can hear its emotions, its joy, its pain, its longing to be felt, remembered, and healed. After our place, Tacloban City, became the ground zero of Typhoon Haiyan last 2013. I think the world heard about it. It brought the world to Tacloban, and it's deemed as the most disastrous typhoon that hit the world. I resorted to research works and readings about the environment. This is relevant to our experiences of the global climate change, and I am passionate to advocate the need for change. So relevantly, this kind of poetry awakens our environmental awareness through emotion and reflection. So the poem serves as a heartfelt reminder that nature is crying out for help. And that's why I say whispering loudly through storms, droughts, and disasters caused by climate change. Discussing it encourages people to feel the pain of the planet and reflect on their own role in healing it. Also, this kind of poetry connects arts with environmental advocacy. Poetry humanizes the crisis. You know that whenever we see dead body all around, children crying, people suffering, no, this crisis hurt us. And turning statistics about climate change into human stories of loss resilience, and hope. So talking about the poem helps bridge science and emotion, inspiring more people, especially the youth, our students, to act and speak up for the environmental protection. Another also that it cultivates a sense of shared responsibility and healing. So we have social responsibility. We are part of the pain and the healing. So the poem calls not only for empathy, but also for action, reminding us that healing the earth means healing ourselves. So earlier we mentioned that it indeed is therapeutic. It heals our souls. So in the context of global climate change, discussing it urges communities to adopt sustainable lifestyles, support green initiatives, and advocate for systemic environmental reform. So let's begin by unpacking these words, because together they tell the whole story of how nature and poetry can awaken us. Okay, so when we say natures, we mean the world that breathes with us, the forests that cradle life, the seas that feed us, the soil that holds our histories. But nature also remembers. It is not scenery, it is a living presence. When the winds rise or the ground trembles during earthquakes, it is not revenge, it is remembrance. And this is a reminder we belong to the earth, not the other way around. Second concept is loud. When nature speaks loudly through wind, rain, and thunder, it demands our attention. So this is the urgency of its voice. It says, "You cannot silence me with indifference." So typhoons like Yolanda, Tino, and Uwan. By the way, these two typhoons, Tino and Uwan, they have been with us the last 2 weeks. So Uwan just left yesterday. So together with the quakes, we had a lot since October that shook our lands. These are not random events. They are messages, strong messages. So nature's loud cry is the earth saying, "Listen to me before I break." Next is whisper. And yet after destruction, we all know, we have experienced it, that there is calm. Right after the storm, the sun shines so bright. So the whisper comes when the noise subsides. In the silence after a storm, in the soft regrowth of grass, in the morning after rain, the earth whispers, "I endure, I forgive, I heal." The next concept, the poetic plea. A poetic plea, this is nature's speaking through art. Literature is an art. So in literature, it speaks us. I mean, the nature speaks us through literature. So poetry translates pain into beauty, despair into dialogue. It gives emotion to what science reports. So we know that statistics would just present us numbers, would just give us pictures. But with literature, it gives us the appropriate emotion. So the poetic plea says, don't just rebuild after earthquakes, after storms. You have to reconnect. Poetry is not only art that can awaken ecological consciousness. Music too. We know that song is a kind of poetry. So music too carry this message across the world. So let's consider Michael Jackson's hits from the early 1990s. The music is titled "Heal the World." Its eco-conscious lyrics urge everyone to care for our planet. So may I read some of the lines. I think this is the coda part. It says, then why do we keep strangling life, wound this earth, crucify its soul, though it's plain to see this world is heavenly, be God's glow. So where is the poetic plea there? Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. The next concept is to feel. To feel is to let the world's wounds enter our awareness. It means not turning away from calamity, but recognizing that the earth's pain and ours are one. So let's always remember that the moment the earth is hurt, we too, men, are hurt as well. So empathy is the first act of restoration. And the last concept is and heal. Okay. What does this mean? Heal is the final, the most quiet plea. Healing is nature's promise after every storm, but it is not only hers to give. It is not only nature that would give it. It is ours to share. So when we plant, when we rebuild and protect, we heal not only the planet, but the human spirit. So we have discussed each concept of the title. And in order to guide us to understand it all together, we turn to eco-criticism. So what is eco-criticism? It is the literary study of the relationship between humans and the environment. Eco-criticism is the study of how literature represents and responds to the natural world. It explores how humans and nature are connected, how our stories reflect our treatment of the earth, and how words can inspire environmental awareness and action. So up to this time, up to this moment, as teachers, especially for language and literature teachers, we have a great impact if we're going to include eco-criticism in our discussion. It can inspire environmental awareness and action. And I have proven this whenever I share this with my students. I started this year 2015. So it asked us to see nature not as a background, but as a living presence with its own voice and value. So through eco-criticism, we examine how writers portray the environment, whether in harmony or in crisis, and how these portrayals can shape our attitudes toward the planet. So somehow we're given that opportunity to reflect. What is our relationship with nature? How do we view nature? Is it only a provider for us? We need the land, we need its land, we need its sky, we need its wind for us to be given convenience and comfort. Is that how we see nature? Is that how we view nature? So we have this kind of opportunity to reflect our relationship with nature. So in other words, it can shape our attitude towards the planet. So in short, eco-criticism reminds us that caring for language and caring for the earth are deeply intertwined acts. So through this lens, through eco-criticism, we see nature not as a backdrop to human stories, but as a living character, one that speaks, feels, suffers, and heals. From this understanding of eco-criticism, we now move to eco-poetry, where the relationship between humans and nature is not just studied but sung. felt and voiced through the language of poetry. So echo poetry is a genre that transforms listening into activism. As the poet Mary Oliver once wrote in Blackwater Woods, year 1983, she says, "To live in this world, you must be able to do three things. First, to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it. And when the time comes to let it go, to let it go." So here, Oliver does not just describe the woods, she lets them speak. The forest teaches us acceptance, reminding us that healing begins in letting go. So let's talk more about echo poetry. So echo poetry emerged from the broader movement of echo criticism, which began gaining around in the 1970s and 1980s. The roots of echo poetry, however, go deeper into romantic poetry. So this is during the time of Wordsworth, Coleridge, Keats, where nature was treated as a living moral force rather than mere scenery. So the term echo poetry itself began to be used in literary circles in the early 1990s, popularized by poets and critics such as Jonathan Bate and John Elder, who linked poetry's imaginative power with ecological awareness. It became more widely recognized in the 2000s, especially through anthologies like the Echo Poetry Anthology in 2013, which brought together classic and contemporary poets writing about the natural world amid climate change. And this year also started, again, I mentioned earlier, after Yolanda, after Typhoon Haiyan, it awakened the passion in me to write about literature, to talk to nature, actually. Not just write about it, but I talk to the sky, I talk to the leaves, I talk to the roots and all. So today, echo poetry stands at the intersection of art and activism. I like this word, art and activism. It's a poetic form that not only praises the earth, but also calls for ecological consciousness and responsibility. So what makes echo poetry? So these are just few of the, we may say, best features or key characteristics. So the first one there is ecocentric perspective. No, there is a shift focus from anthropocentric. When you say anthropocentric, it's human-centered. We feel that we are the center of the world. We humans. That's why we feel that it's okay to cut trees because I need the land to build my house. I need the land to construct my business. That's anthropocentric. Okay, so there's a shift from anthropocentric views to an earth-centered, which is called ecocentric. And now we give nature its own voice, its agency, and emotional stability. The second one is interconnectedness. So this emphasizes the mutual dependence between humans and environment, showing that what harms the earth harms us. Remember that when earth is in pain, we too are in pain. So that is interconnectedness. The third one is environmental awareness and activism. So this functions as both art, literature, and advocacy. We advocate the caring, the preservation, the sustainability of Mother Earth. So this aims to inspire ecological responsibility, sustainability, and climate action. Now, the fourth one is empathy for non-human life. I guess this is the reason why I love pets. I talk to plants. No, I talk to the sun. I talk to the wind. So this encourages readers to feel with animals, with plants, with rivers and landscapes, recognizing their intrinsic value beyond human use. They can exist without us. Okay, but we need them. So that is what we mean by intrinsic value. The next is witness and warning. Many eco poems bear witness to environmental destruction, loss, and extinction, while also expressing grief and moral accountability. Right after Haiyan, that was 2013, by year 2014 and beyond, there are so many writings about their experiences of the disastrous typhoon that hit us. And these are eco poems. They are witnesses to our pain and our mourning during that time. So they are alive. The experience, what happened is alive because of literature. The next is renewal and hope. So despite themes of loss, eco poetry often carries a healing or regenerative message, affirming the resilience of both nature and the human spirit. So if nature can rejuvenate, we too, the human spirit, can also rejuvenate, can regenerate. Okay. Then the next is the local and sensory detail. So this is grounded in specific places, seasons, and natural imagery. So eco poems use vivid sensory language to reconnect readers with lived experience of the natural world. That's why I like reading eco poetry of different places, because of course the context, the content would depend on the context of the place. Then the last is fusion of science and spirit. Okay. This balances ecological fact with spiritual or emotional insight. And this is our opportunity to bridge knowledge and empathy. So we put emotion to science. We put empathy to knowledge. Okay. So all of those 8 would tell us that a work is actually eco poetry, or uses the lens of eco criticism. Okay. So a work is not eco poetry. May I just emphasize this, okay? So that we will not be confused. A work is not eco poetry if it treats nature merely as a backdrop or decoration for human drama or short story, rather than giving it agency, voice, or emotional significance. It does not engage with ecological awareness, interconnection, or environmental responsibility, meaning it is just anthropocentric rather than ecocentric. So, what do you mean by giving nature agency, voice, or emotional significance in eco poetry? Let's treat it one by one. When we say agency, nature acts on its own, has power to influence events, or can make decisions, not just passively exist. And an example of an eco poetry is the river refuses to forgive. The debris of our neglect, it carves new paths, swallowing bridges, rewriting towns. So in this line, now, the river acts, it carves, it swallows, it rewrites. It is not just a backdrop, it has its own consequences. Okay, another example, but this time it is non-eco poetry, okay? We walked along the river, its gentle waters reflecting our joy. So, in this line, the river is passive, merely reflecting humans. It has no agency. Okay. The next is the voice. The first one earlier is agency. The second one is voice. Nature speaks in the poem. Its experiences, suffering, or responses are part of the narrative. For example, in this line, I am the forest, and I weep when chainsaws bite my ribs. Yet, still I grow reaching for light. So beautiful. The forest speaks for itself, expressing pain and resilience whenever people cut the trees. Okay? So, in contrast, we can say that this is non-echo poetry when it says, the forest was dark and dense, casting shadows over the paths. So here, the forest is described objectively. It has no voice or perspective. And the last one is emotional significance. So nature's experiences are meaningful, capable of evoking empathy or moral reflection in readers. An example of this is the mangroves shiver under the oil slick, and we shiver with them, knowing loss is shared. So there is the emotional connection. There is mutual emotional connection. Readers feel nature's suffering. Okay. I think I've been advanced in my slide. I'm sorry for that. Anyway, so let's now go into four. Okay? Four things that I would like to emphasize when we speak of eco poetry. The first one is nature that speaks, eco criticism, and the voice of the earth. So, eco criticism asks, how does literature give voice to nature? Classic poets like William Wordsworth imagine nature as a moral teacher. In his poem, Lines Written in Early Spring, he wrote, "And this my fate, that every flower enjoy the air it breathes." So through these lines, Wordsworth personifies the flowers. The natural world is alive, breathing, rejoicing, and aware. So fast forward to our century and the whisper continues. Kimiko Hans in 2016 in his poem Jack in the Pulpit gives us a more intimate modern voice. It says, names shape what we see, as if the naming itself were the act of seeing. Here, the planet speaks through its name, reminding us that language both connects and limits our relationship with nature. Eco-critically, we can read this as a call to mindfulness, that to truly see nature, we must listen beyond labels and human categories. From Wordsworth's moral serenity to Hans' ecological mindfulness, the same current runs through. Nature speaks, and we are its interpreters. So we're done with nature that speaks. Let's go to nature's emotions. Nature that feels, the whisper that we forgot. Poetry makes us feel nature's emotion, its grief, its patience, its love for us. Let's listen to Mary Oliver's voice in her poem, Sleeping in the Forest, written in 1983. It says, "I thought the earth remembered me. She took me back so tenderly." So Mary Oliver here teaches us that nature speaks even in stillness. Her tenderness is a language. Oliver imagines the earth as a mother who welcomes her children back into her arms. Through eco-criticism, we read this as an ecological reunion, the human reuniting with what it once abandoned. But not all nature's whispers are tender, we know that. Some are sorrowful, some pleading. Let's take a more recent poem written in 2022, Azars Hussein's, titled Nature Heals. Nature sounds a great deal of peace, comfort, and solace. The wounds of mind, soul, and heart, smartly treating nature's ancient art. This poem reflects a post-pandemic consciousness that in moments of human crisis, we turn again to nature's healing sounds. The bird songs, waves, wind. Do you do this? I do, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I resorted to nature's healing sounds. Hussein's lines remind us that even in silence, nature whispers, "Come back to me." Another poem titled Storm says, "But when the sea rises and the wind screams, this too is language." So nature is saying here, I am alive and I am losing breath. So all of this present or confirms that nature feels. Next is an example. I like this example. This is written actually in our own language, and this was translated into English. Okay, this time, nature is a source of enlightenment. I would like you to refer to the yellow lines. This time, nature is a source of enlightenment, revealing its intrinsic value. I saw this personally, like 15 days after Yolanda or a month after Yolanda. And the poem reads, "Meanwhile, out in the yard, the once fallen banana plants are sending out new shoots, are raising their leaves up, are sending out suckers and fruiting, making no noise." Three powerful lines. This gives imagery of a flattened ground that once stood with banana plants. Just as the victims fell and died on the ground, so did the banana plants. The solace is also to blame for the death of non-humans, yet the persona gives a different perspective of nature. It does not merely punish nor bring wrath. It cries for losing itself so quickly in the hands of people, and in sorrow for losing confidence in the caregivers of her wealth, those who will revive and sustain her beauty soon. So the lines, no, those lines reveal the ironic loud lamentation of humans alongside the silent cry of nature as it revives herself. She was just silent. So echo-critically, these poems reveal a deep truth that nature's voice mirrors human emotion, but without human arrogance. Again, may I repeat, nature's voice mirrors human emotions, but without human arrogance. Nature is so peaceful and soft. So it teaches without words. It heals without rewards. What does it mean when we speak of nature that suffers? When nature speaks loudest, she suffers. And these are the calamity and the cry of the earth. What happens when we refuse to listen? Nature's whisper becomes a cry. Just like us, we cry when we're in pain. How? Through typhoons, floods, droughts, and quakes. The earth begins to speak in a new, furious language, not of revenge, but of warning. Let us consider how poets render these moments of calamity. I have here one example, The Story of the Earth, written in 2015 by Rochelle Owens. It says, "The rivers choke on plastic veins. The sky coughs. The soil sleeps beneath the ashes of progress." These lines are raw, right? Because nature's suffering is real. So every calamity we've endured, Yolanda, the floods, the quakes, They are not separate from us. We are part of the story of the earth's pain. Another poem titled The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berries. It says, when despair for the world grows in me, I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. So Berry's poem is both lament and refuge, an invitation to return to the calm wisdom of the natural world when human society collapses. Now, may I contrast this with a Filipino poet, Marjorie Ivasco, in her poem Earth Dance, written in 1991. One line says, "We have come full circle to the song of roots." So Ivasco sees nature not as destroyed, but as cyclical and resilient. Even after calamity, roots sing again. Nature's pain and resilience coexist. Her storms are not vengeance, but remembrance. So when typhoons lash or volcanoes erupt, nature's voice may sound violent. Of course, for us, this is violence. But echo critically, we can interpret this as the earth's form of expression. It is not anger, it is communication. Join with me. Imagine the ocean saying, "You have burned too long." The mountains murmuring, "You have cut too deep." The rain whispering, "You have forgotten how to listen." These are not human words, but human readings of ecological grief. In calamity, nature reminds us that balance has been broken, yet healing is still possible. This is again a Yolanda poem, and this hurts a lot for me. So may I share this with you. Again, when nature speaks in its loudest, most furious voice, it can overwhelm us. And this poem, the title of this poem is Hunger, capture this devastation through the eyes of children caught in storm's wrath. May I read? Then a child arrived. "Where's your father?" Caught by the sea that chased him. "Where's your mother?" She was swept out to sea. My mother was holding Intoy, my 2-year-old brother. His cries were drowned in the wind. With my weakening hands, I held on to a branch. You know, these lines show both human vulnerability and the harsh, consuming power of nature. Yet, even in this destruction, we see human and natural resilience, a theme we will revisit in poems of recovery and healing. And the last one is nature that heals. It's nature's intrinsic power. It heals, the healer and the teacher. Nature's power is not dependent on us. We know that, but we are dependent on nature. We also know that. So even after destruction, it finds a way to renew, as seeds sprouting through cracked concrete, coral regenerating in silence. What do you call that? Green leaves sprouting in once denuded forests. So we're going to see this in the poem of Marnie Kilates titled Return of the Trees, written in 2012. It says, "The trees will come back, not out of forgiveness, but because they must." So what does this mean? That nature heals because life insists on continuing. Healing, however, is not passive. It's active participation. So, what do we do when we plant a tree, clean a shore, or teach a poem an echo poem. We heal both earth and self. So in the words of John Clare, in the 19th century poet who chronicled the countryside, he says, I found the palms in the fields and only wrote them down. This humility is the heart of eco-criticism. It reminds us that nature is not our possession, but our text, and we are merely readers. So the power of nature lies not in dominance, but in persistence, in its ability to survive, adapt, and whisper still. When calamities pass, nature does not boast. It simply begins again. Okay. To end, may I share this with you? Okay. For a while, please. I would like to anyway, it does not work. Okay. Does it work?
Yes.
It is. Okay. Actually, I am supposed to show you a very short clip, a video of what happened 2 days ago after Typhoon Uwan hit us. There was this video circulating where the mangroves were seen dancing against the clashing of the wind. And I was inspired and I made this poem, and I would like to share this with you. And I titled the poem, Two Old Friends Meet Again. I am the mangrove, my branches swaying like old arms waving in the breeze. I feel the wild energy of the waves, their powerful splashes daring me to move faster, dance stronger. Look how I simply guard my neighbor coast and hospitably welcome my friendly waves as they shower me with salty sprays. I laugh with the rustle of my leaves, steady and proud, rooted deeply, yet swaying free with quiet strength. My friendly waves are hyper. They are so playful. They crash again, eager, relentless. And I respond, moving with grace and resilience. Together, we share this ancient dance. Shall I say that this is our TikTok version? Sometimes in fierce play, sometimes in gentle harmony, reminding each other of our place in this endless conversation. Don't you hear us? Join us, please, I plead. Turn away with pride, as if my friendly waves are here only to bring you pain or tragedy. Listen to them calling out. They do not seek to harm, but to connect, to dance, to live. Someday we'd meet again and have a need for more than reminiscing. So have me, more of me, plant me there and in your hearts. I'll be strength, balance, and a shared rhythm. We're gonna be three old friends. No tragedy, just synergy. Maybe this time it will be loving, we'll find. So, eco-criticism is not only an academic lens, it is a moral awakening. It invites us to move from reading nature as it to listening to nature as you. Poetry may not stop a storm, but it can awaken those who can. The earth speaks in winds and waves. We only need to remember how to listen. Nature asks not for grief, but remembrance. The forest wants our tending. The oceans wants our restraint. Healing begins with listening. So starting today, may we listen to the whisper and the cry alike, because nature's voice is not fading. It is waiting for us to remember, to feel, and in feeling, to heal. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. That's very, very insightful presentation, Professor Jenny, Professor Edwin Kola. Wow, it's quite poetic, yeah. Um, I I was amazed with some of your words, just like healing is nature's promise after every storm. And then, yeah, nature is not the ground, it is a living presence. Yeah, it's quite wide. It's very, very deep understandings. It's have a lot of very, very deep meaning, yeah. And then also the words, yeah. What else? Okay, I've already write it and okay, the earth remembered me. She took me back so tenderly. Wow. And even in destruction, there is a resilience, human and natural. So I, if I'm not mistaken, I can conclude that nature and especially the earth is still very, very generous, even though despite the destruction with human being made, right? And
You're right.
also, yeah, well, the earth and nature has already given their benefits for human beings, but on the other hand, sometimes we forget. But when we forget, the nature and the earth usually take us back so tenderly. Wow, that's very nice. It's inspiring. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you so
yeah.
much.
Okay. I believe that there are still there are some participants who would like to um ask you some question, but I'm going to hold after the second spectator speakers also deliver the presentation. And now, thank you, Professor Edwin Kola. We learn a lot from your presentation, especially our understanding about nature. Yeah. Okay. Right. And then we're gonna move to the second great speakers. She is Dr. Christine Dawn S. Mombay. Hello, Professor Mombay. Are you there?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. Can you hear me clearly,
Yes.
Dr. Retno?
Hi, yeah. Oh, yeah. I can see you, and then I can hear you clearly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let me present your bio notes to the participants. I'm going to share the your bio notes. Okay. All right. Dr. Christine Dawn Mombay is a committed language educator from the Eastern Visayas State University, the Philippines, where she has been serving for more than 13 years. Yeah, that's just a long years. Yeah. Okay. Over the course of her academic career, she has demonstrated a steadfast commitment to teaching, research, and public service. Dr. Mombay earned her Bachelor of Arts in Communication Arts from the University of the Philippines, Tacloban College in Linguistics, Communication, and the Humanities. And she later pursued her Master of Arts in English at Leyte Normal University, where she honed her expertise in language pedagogy and literary studies. And she also received her Doctor of Philosophy in English majoring in language at the University of St. George, Recoletos, Cebu City, the Philippines, where she deepened her engagement in linguistic inquiry, discourse studies, and sociolinguistic research. Through her tenure at Eastern Visayas State University, Dr. Membe has held several academic and administrative positions. She has served as program coordinator of the Bachelor of Arts in English Language, and she also served as research coordinator of the College of Arts and Sciences, helping cultivate a culture of inquiry and scholarly productivity among faculty members and the students. In 2023, Dr. Membe was appointed as Director of External Affairs, where she facilitated partnership, linkages, and collaborative projects that expanded the university's reach beyond its academic wall. Now she is the Dean of the Schools of Arts and Sciences of Eastern Visayas State University. And Dr. Membe's research interests lie at the intersection of language and society, with a strong focus on discourse analysis, language variation, sociolinguistic, and intercultural communication. And her scholarly work reflects a deep interest in how language construct, reflects, and negotiates social realities. She has also expanded research in the integration of AI in English language education and literature, particularly in how emerging technologies shape language learning, critical thinking, and literary practices. Beyond her institutional responsibilities, Dr. Membe also actively engaged in professional development, research dissemination, and academic collaboration, and she has participated in various local and international conferences as a resource speaker in some local training and seminars, in research forums, and that promote academic excellence and innovation in language studies and education. And today, Dr. Membe has already been here, and she will deliver the insightful presentation, Cultural Inclusion in the Classroom, Navigating Diversity Through Language. To Dr. Membe, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Retno. I put pressure to myself because of my bio note. It's too long, too comprehensive. Anyhow, I would like to share my screen. Mm. But before that, my respect to the Faculty of Humanities, the English Literature Study Program, Universitas Diponegoro, the organizer of this seminar, our dear students, guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, everyone. I am very much honored to be with you today to share some insights on language and culture. And thank you so much once again, Dr. Retno, for your kind introduction.
You're welcome.
Okay. Uh, allow me to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it clearly.
Okay, thank you so much. Um, Once again, good afternoon. And today, we'll explore how cultural intelligence, or what we call cultural quotient, enables us educators, teachers, and even you students to navigate cultural and linguistic diversity. So for our educators, as our educators here in Southeast Asia, our classrooms, I think everyone knows that our classrooms are melting pots of traditions, of values, and of course, our languages. So understanding how to manage that diversity with empathy and skill is what cultural intelligence all about. So over the next minutes or next hour, hopefully, if the seminar permits, we will try to combine constructs, theories, practical insights, and of course, implications. Okay, so I hope this session, or yeah, my session will be both informative and personally meaningful for you. So our outline for today is quite clear and practical. This is I'm more into practical than technical aspect. So we'll start by unpacking what cultural intelligence is and what are its components. Then we'll connect it to the context of language as it shape and reflect culture or as our daily tool in education. And then we will see uh, we will try to explore strategies to make our classrooms more culturally intelligent. And lastly, we will try to identify some implications of cultural intelligence or CQ principles in various contexts. Okay, so in today's globalized and interconnected world, our classrooms have become microcosms of global society or microcosms of cultural diversity. So in many parts of Southeast Asia, including, of course, Indonesia and the Philippines, students or teachers come to varied linguistic, ethnic, and cultural backgrounds, right? So try to look around your classrooms. You might find students who speak from different dialects, practice different religions, or hold different social values. Okay? And thus, even in a single country like Indonesia and Philippines, cultural variation is immense. Cultural intelligence is connected with intercultural competence. But again, as mentioned, even in a single country like Indonesia, there is what we call intercultural uh, phenomenon. Okay. So for instance, in an Indonesian classroom, we might have Japanese, Sundanese, Chinese Indonesian, and international students learning together. So this diversity enriches the learning experience, and we have to manage that with sensitivity, or else it will be misunderstood. And that's why our goal as educators, we are intercultural mediators, and our role is not to erase diversity, but to navigate with intelligence and empathy. For example, imagine a teacher asking, does everyone understand? Okay. Or do you understand? And the students just politely nod, even though some of them did not fully grasp the lesson. So in some cultures, students may avoid asking questions only to save face or to show respect for authority. So for us teachers, what seems like agreement for us in our culture might actually be silence born of politeness among the students. Okay, do you agree? And such instances highlight the need for cultural intelligence. It is the ability to understand, respect, and effectively navigate cultural differences in various settings. And since I already mentioned about cultural intelligence, allow me to provide more context about the term. So what is this cultural intelligence? We're familiar with IQ or intelligent quotient. We also have emotional quotient. We also have CQ, cultural quotient, or it's more commonly known as cultural intelligence. This term or concept was first introduced by Early and Ang in 2003, in which it is defined as the capability to function effectively across various cultural contexts or in situations characterized by cultural diversity. For example, ethnic, ethno-linguistic, organizational, generational. So, cultural intelligence is our capability to function effectively um, in various situations. So, cultural intelligence, if I may emphasize, is not about memorizing or knowing facts about another culture or about cultural facts. For example, like knowing that when to bow our heads or shake our hands. It's not just about that, okay? But it is about adapting your thinking, adapting your communication and behavior to fit to different cultural contexts. Okay? So, in teaching, for example, this means that we recognize students that interpret knowledge, authority, and respect differently depending on their cultural backgrounds. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're talking about cultural intelligence, we're going um, to deal with people from various countries, okay? Even in our own classroom, if you are 30, inside your classroom, there are 30 different cultures. And thus, we have to adapt with these 30 ways of thinking, these 30 values eminent from these individuals. So that's what we mean by cultural intelligence. So to unpack the four components of this cultural intelligence, or CQ, we have four: the drive, the CQ drive, the CQ knowledge, the CQ strategy, the CQ action, and yeah, so up to CQ action. So let's try to discuss one by one. When we say CQ drive, it's also termed as the motivational CQ. Okay. So, motivation to learn about other cultures, our willingness and curiosity to engage with people from different cultures. That's the first component in cultural intelligence, our willingness, our motivation, our enthusiasm to deal with people from other cultures. That's already an aspect of cultural intelligence. Next, um, let's have an example. A teacher who encourages students to share their traditions, even if they are from a major culture, a dominant culture, if I may say. That's what we mean by motivational CQ or CQ drive. Okay, so we can pose question: do we want to interact with people from other cultures? This includes our interest, our confidence, and our motivation. Okay, so that's for motivational CQ. Next component, we have the CQ knowledge, the cognitive CQ. Okay. So cognitive CQ or CQ knowledge is about understanding cultural systems and norms, how they differ in values, in communication styles, and social norms. So this is where we place our knowledge, our awareness of the cultural values. So for us educators, for us teachers, this means understanding why students from this society value group harmony over individual expression, for example. Okay. Um, in the aspect of CQ knowledge, we may pose question, what do we know about the cultural system? Okay, so what are their values? What are their communication styles? What are their norms? What are their social hierarchies? By knowing these cultural systems, we are actually ticking the component CQ knowledge or cognitive CQ. Next, we have the third aspect or component, the metacognitive CQ or the CQ strategy. This is the ability to reflect and plan before and during intercultural interactions. For example, let's have an example. A teacher anticipating that students may hesitate to participate may adjust by incorporating small group discussions. So if a teacher has this component of metacognitive CQ and learns that some of his or her students do not want individual participation. So the strategy of the teacher, he or she will come up with small group activities, such as small group discussions. Okay, so in CQ strategy, we try to answer or ask ourselves, how do we plan and reflect during intercultural interactions? Again, CQ drive is our motivation. Are we willing to learn other people's culture? CQ knowledge, what do we know about cultural systems? CQ strategy, how do we plan when we interact with other cultures? So it's about me being mindful and adjusting our responses. And last but definitely not the least is the CQ action or behavioral CQ. This is the skill to adapt behavior effectively. Okay, both verbal and nonverbal behavior. And it's according to cultural context. For example, you modify eye contact because the person you're talking to doesn't want eye contact, or their culture, they find eye contact to be rude. So you try to modify or adjust eye contact or tone. Okay, if you're sensitive that the one you're speaking with is quite sensitive as well with high tone, so you adjust your tone. Or as educator, your classroom management style to suit intercultural expectations. So in this component, you pose a question, can we adopt our behavior appropriately? Okay, so can I use indirect speech in this classroom? Or I can use other ways to provide my lecture. Okay, or I can be more direct, okay, in this culture. So these are the questions that we pose in the context of CQ action or behavioral seek you. Okay, so I hope we're clear with the different dimensions or different components of cultural intelligence or cultural context. And um, cultural for us educators, we can reflect, okay, at least at this point in time, okay, although I will not get your answers, but try to reflect your teaching, okay, or learning for students, learning experience in your classroom. Which do you think of these four CQ aspects you already practice well? And which among these components do you wish to develop more? Okay? As a point of reflection, both for our teachers on board and for our students. Okay. Um, all right. So, cultural intelligence, one of the key aspects that we have to take into consideration is the role of the language. Okay? Because remember, language is not just a tool, merely not a tool for communication, but it carries meaning, or it carries itself your culture. So it reflects worldview, okay? Um, it reflects worldview, social hierarchy, politeness, conventions of a group or a society or a people. So according to Claire Cramsh in 1998, language embodies cultural meanings because it shapes how we perceive and interpret the world. If you are familiar, some of you here, our educators here, our students, if you're familiar as well with the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, the relation of language and worldview, okay? The language shapes our worldview. So that's one of the notable hypothesis or theory in relation to language and culture. So words, gestures, and even silence are culturally coded. Do you agree on that? Okay, that words, gestures, and even silence, they are culturally coded. So language is a vehicle of culture. So for example, the classroom is a venue of um, cultural negotiation. Okay? It's a venue of cultural negotiation. Teacher and students, they constantly interpret each other's meanings through their own cultural lenses. That's why I mentioned again earlier that if there are 30 people inside the classroom, including that of including the teacher, rather, there are 30 different views, 30 different cultural lenses. Okay, so we have really to work to adapt with everyone's thinking, okay, to make sure nothing is misunderstood and so on. Language carries culture, identity, and values. Then every expression has a cultural script. This is a very good phrase, cultural script. It refers to the idea that communication styles vary, whether it's indirect or direct. Communication styles vary. Language choices, our choices, okay, of using formal or informal language, using direct or indirect communication, actually can express respect, hierarchy, or even solidarity. It's up to our purpose, depending on our purpose. And then misunderstandings are often cultural, not linguistic. Okay, remember that. Misunderstandings are often cultural, not linguistic. Okay. Uh, Misunderstanding can arise not because you have poor English, we have poor English, or I cannot understand Bahasa Indonesia. I'm not proficient with Bahasa Indonesia, but because of different cultural scripts. Okay? So remember that. Misunderstanding are often cultural, not linguistic. Even if you are speaking uh, the same language, you can still, our misunderstanding can still arise, okay? Because it's not in the language, it's in the culture that you belong. So language is the most powerful vehicle of culture. It's through language that we express respect, politeness, hierarchy, and even emotions. Take note of that. So let's have some examples. In some cultures, saying no directly is considered rude. I'm not certain with the culture of Indonesia, but in some culture, directly saying no is considered rude to them. Okay, so what do people do? They use softer in expressions. For example, I'll try or maybe later. Okay. Then in Indonesia or in Indonesian language, people use kami. I think we have the same uh, denotation. In Filipino, we have the same denotation of kami and kita. Okay. People use kami. Okay. You exclude the listener. Am I right? Okay. Or kita. Okay. We include the listener. That's for Filipino. But to give you a notable difference, in our language, Waray, kita, kita is a different word. Tayo pala sa Filipino. Okay. I pause to think about it. We also use kami Okay, same gihapon. Same kami and kita. Okay? But in Filipino, it's tayo instead of kita. But there's also the word kita that include the listener. Okay? But there's another term, tayo, in Filipino. Okay? And in Filipino culture, we often use po and opo to show respect. Okay? Which is something not found in English. Okay? So those are some examples on how language differs from one culture to another. Okay. So to give you more context on how we can apply cultural intelligence, let me give you first some common challenges in an intercultural classroom. Okay, so as you notice, silence is not equal to disinterest, politeness is not equal to agreement, and so on. So these are some typical scenarios that can be easily misread. For instance, when students are silent, I think I mentioned this earlier, right? When students are silent, a teacher may think they're disinterested or they're not engaged, okay? But for the students, their silence can be a cultural sign of respect. Okay? So we must not assume. In other cultures, humor is seen as friendly and relational. I think Filipino culture is one in in the use of humor, okay? Rampantly. In others, it may seem appropriate. Humor may seem inappropriate in formal learning spaces. Okay. So the key lesson there, we need to interpret behavior within its cultural context. So cultural intelligence here uh, allows us to read these differences with sensitivity rather than judgment. We do not assume. We have to learn first the existing cultural value you're in, cultural system you're in, okay, your willingness, okay, how are you going to adapt, and then how to effectively adapt in the situation. Okay, so more examples of intercultural classrooms, some common challenges. In some, a teacher asking open-ended questions might expect analytical responses. For example, your opinion, okay? What are your thoughts? What are your insights? So if you as a teacher, you provide open-ended questions, your expectation based on your culture is to get analytical responses. But there are some students who are trained in traditional education systems that may prefer to give correct answers rather than opinions. That's in my experience, especially in an intercultural communication class, which I am handling, I always tell my students whenever I pose open-ended questions that for them to be encouraged to speak uh, in, in the classroom, I always tell them to acknowledge differences in opinions, and then uh, there is no right and wrong answer as long as you can justify it, because that's from your own cultural lens. Okay? So, but again, there are some students who are trained in giving correct answers. They think that's the correct answer. They will fight for that answer because they think it's correct. And you as an educator, you have to be sensible to accept, okay, even if it's against your own cultural values. Then the use of humor in classroom, I think I mentioned this earlier, which is common among Filipino teachers, may not always translate well in other cultures. Okay. Um, Then students might not ask questions, not because they are shy, but because their culture values silence as respect. I think I've been mentioning that earlier. Okay, so to give you more context of intercultural competence, because we're gearing on that at this point in time, there are two foundational frameworks that guide intercultural competence. I think some of our educators here, our language educators here are familiar of these theoretical frameworks. Byram, who emphasizes some pillars in intercultural competence: the knowledge, okay, knowledge of other cultures; skills, skills of interpreting and relating; skills of discovery and interaction; and then attitudes, attitudes of curiosity, and then critical cultural awareness. These are the aspects, the pillars needed to communicate across cultures, or to achieve intercultural communicative competence: knowledge, skills, attitudes. Very important to attain ICC, or intercultural communicative competence. We also have from Derdorf, um, he posited intercultural growth as a process. So the start of his process, at the start of the process, um, respect, then openness, okay, respect and openness, and then which lead to adaptability, and then ultimately effective and appropriate communication and behavior in intercultural situation. Okay, respect, openness, then adaptability, and then appropriate behavior. Okay, and then we have the CQ of uh, CQ model of Ang, Early and Ang. So these are actually models of intercultural communicative competence. Okay, so um, cultural intelligence is actually essential for effective interaction, as highlighted earlier. We have to have this kind of intelligence for us to effectively communicate with people from various cultures, to build respectful relationships with them, and eventually to adapt as an individual, to adapt to different cultural settings. So we really need that cultural intelligence. And thus, allow me to share some strategies for navigating diversity, okay, or for establishing cultural intelligence or intercultural competence through language, given that I am working into language instruction. So I'll be sharing with you some of my personal notes, experiences, activities that I did for my intercultural communication class. So first strategy, you foster linguistic awareness and respect. So in terms of language, right? So what could be our goal in this strategy? Perhaps we can develop or create a classroom culture that values all languages and dialects. Okay. For instance, in the Philippines, there are more than 170 languages, or 100, yeah. Then our language, the Waray language, is one of the major ethno-linguistic groups, or Waray language is one of the major languages in the Philippines. And even that Waray language has its own varieties and dialects with differences in meaning, differences in pronunciation, differences across dialects, across language variation, okay, or language varieties. So as a strategy in navigating diversity through language, you can create a classroom culture that values all languages instead of imposing an English only policy. Although I understand the rationale of imposing such rule because you want to help your students practice communication skills, but sometimes it hinders other students to express themselves well, okay? And thus, or why not come up with a culture that values all languages, including its varieties and dialects. So acknowledge multilingualism as an asset, not a barrier, okay? Some students, if you may observe, use multiple languages at home. For instance, in the Philippines, our children at home use English, Filipino, Waray language, among other languages existing in the Philippines. And this diversity enriches classroom communication. You can also establish that in your classroom. Then encourage code switching in discussions or group work to make your students at ease in expressing themselves, okay, to build comfort or inclusion before you transition to a formal academic language. So during brainstorming, perhaps you allow your students to speak in their language, but of course, in their presentations, they have to use the target language. Okay? Use translanguaging. This is now a recent development in language use, okay, or in the in language field. The translanguaging, the concept of translanguaging. What is this one? The practice of using multiple languages or bilingual persons' full linguistic repertoire to communicate, think, and learn. So it's like acknowledging multilingualism, but you really allow the use in its full linguistic repertoire in their communication, in their way of thinking, and even in learning. You, as an educator, you are also using your own language, not just English, in teaching concepts. So you allow students to think, discuss, or draft ideas in their native languages before presenting. Then, include mini language awareness sessions. For instance, how words, idioms, and cultural expressions differ across languages. Okay, let me give you an example. This is one of my tasks for my Waray Culture and the Arts. We have a course in EVSU, in Eastern Visayas State University, Waray Culture and the Arts. And as part of their project, one of their projects is a mini dictionary. So I let my students collect at least 30 terms from their local or hometown. And just to give you um, further context, it is the activity was not merely students who are learning, okay, but even I, as an educator, I learned a lot of terms, okay, in my own language, the Waray language. For example, this one, I have an example here. The word mayon, okay, mayon is actually a cooking oil. It's cooking oil in English, but mayon has different varieties in Waray language, even in just Waray language. We have asiti, mantika, among others. So it's not just mayon. We call cooking oil mayon. We call cooking oil asiti. We call cooking oil mantika. So in my culture, the Waray language in my culture, I only know Mayon. But later on, when I dealt with other Waray speaking individuals from different parts of the region, I learned that they call their cooking oil asiti. So you see, this is how you establish linguistic awareness and respect. And you always remind your students that there is no right and wrong answer because that's part of your culture. There is no right term for that word, okay? Because that's part of how language shape your culture, how language shapes your worldview. Next, use inclusive and culturally responsive language. Okay? So as educators or even for our students, avoid idioms, avoid slangs that might exclude non-native speakers. Do not use terms that you think will not be understood by some of your students. Okay? Then choose gender neutral terms or avoid language that assumes one cultural norm. For example, we are using now politically correct or gender neutral language, like instead of police man, police woman, a woman, we have police officer, something like that. This is in English. Okay? I am not certain if it also applies in Bahasa Indonesia. Then you can also model inclusive communication, acknowledge diverse cultural practices, religions, traditions respectfully, and encourage students to share stories from their own culture. Example, if you want to discuss leadership, okay, you can actually invite students to share um, stories from their local culture about leadership and then compare it to other students. Okay, for them, how do they define leadership? So you can ask stories from students from their own culture. Next, integrate culturally diverse content. Um, our goal, perhaps, here is to represent diverse identities and experiences in our teaching materials, whether we teach language, we teach literature. Okay, make sure every group is well represented. Okay, so select reading materials, examples, and case studies from different ethnic, linguistic, and cultural backgrounds, or avoid tokenism. Tokenism is um, the practice of making only a symbolic effort to include a minority group, or instead of mentioning culture only on special cases, you try to include that in your syllabus or in your curriculum. Then highlight local and regional authors and voices to validate students' live experiences. Okay. For example, this one, as one of my activities in intercultural communication, I discuss to my students the concept of subculture or concepts of subculture and counterculture. Okay, so this is a culture inside a culture. Okay, so I ask my students to look for different subcultures or countercultures existing in the Philippines and abroad. Okay, or I think this one is in my literature class. I have my literature class, and my approach, this is specifically world literature. And of course, if it's world literature, um, we have a separate literature class for Philippine literature, focus on Philippine literature. So for world literature, these are literary texts across the globe. So we have works from different continents or regions across the globe. So in this example, this is from Asian literature. So I have here a literary text from China. I have here from India. I have here from Japan. Okay, so I represent some of the major uh, regions in Asia. I think I also touch some Indonesian text, okay, as part of my syllabus in literature class. So include short text of writers across the globe in English language teaching. Then you can also model cultural intelligence in communication. Okay, so as educators, I think we're more on, we can apply this as educators. We practice active listening, okay, noticing what is said and what cultural values are behind it, okay, instead of giving judgment right away. Let's be proactive when we listen to the thoughts, opinions, or insights of our students. Or use clarifying and paraphrasing strategies. Okay, for example, if the statement is unclear to you, you mention if I understood correctly, you mean this is to establish the idea that you are avoiding assumption. Okay? Then show curiosity instead of judgment. So you can ask your students, like, can you tell me more about how it's done in your culture? Okay, instead of judging um, the insight of the students based on their culture, you encourage them to express more. Okay, you show curiosity instead of your judgment, and then reflect after interactions. Okay, so after you dealt with people from other cultures, try to reflect your actions. We're able to adapt my tone, my choice of words to the context, and so that later on, if ever you've done some mishaps in the communication, you can adjust. Okay, let's have encourage empathy, okay, through storytelling. So invite students to share their linguistic journeys or use story circles or language portraits. Okay. Connect empathy. For example, in my class, I asked my students to come up with their cultural self-identity analysis. Before pandemic, when we have face-to-face classes, um, I usually designate the activity by groups. Okay, one interviewing his or her group mates and coming up with cultural self-identity analysis. But after pandemic, at the onset of pandemic, of course, since the activity is done individually, so individual context in coming up with cultural self-identity analysis. The point is, students should come up a comprehensive report about their material culture, what are their livelihood, their structure, and they're going to share that in class. This is another paper on nonverbal communication because part of our discussion and one of the major aspects in language or in communication being misinterpreted is the nonverbal communication. So I asked my students to come up with analysis paper on nonverbal communication, ask them to watch a movie and then identify some nonverbal cues. It's like a mini research paper on nonverbal communication. So this is an example um, output from my student on visualizing silent language. Okay, so hers, I think it's the perks of being a wallflower. Okay, so there are discussions with timestamps, what part of the movie, okay, being focused in the analysis. So those are some uh, context. Okay. Uh,
Hello, Dr. Mambe. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. It seems that Professor Mambe, uh, or the signal of Professor Mambe was not really good, and it is disconnected. We just wait until Professor Mambe return. Ah, here you are. Welcome back, Professor Mumbai. Hello, Professor Mumbai. Can you hear me? Okay. We're waiting until Professor Mumbai come back. Okay, while we're waiting for Professor Mumbai to return to the seminar, I also invite all the participants here to get involved in the seminar um, by putting your question or input or your any expression into the chat room. Yeah, it seems take a bit time for Professor Mumbai to join. Okay, I would like to remind all the participants to, if you have any question or inputs or any expression you'd like to express, please write on the question chat. I mean, on the chat rooms. Oh yeah, here she is. Welcome back, Dr. Mumbai. Can you hear me?
Ay,
Yeah.
my apologies for a technical disruption. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you so much for your patience, everyone. Um, Allow me to share my screen. I'm using a different device at the moment because something happened with my previous device. But allow me to continue my discussion. It'll be very quick.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your patience. Uh, Can you see my screen?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay. So, allow me to continue. Where was I? It's design. Okay. So I think this is the last slide when I ask my students to analyze nonverbal communication in movies. Okay. So I encourage my students to establish empathy on storytelling, either through their individual experiences, through their cultural self-identity analysis, or on how they understand a particular movie, but with focus on a major aspect, which is a nonverbal communication. Next, you can also design activities that build cultural and linguistic bridges. For instance, students research. You ask your students to research and present cultural norms in their own culture. I think my activity on subculture and counterculture fits in this category. Or earlier in the during the morning session, one of our speakers discussed about linguistic landscape and methods on doing linguistic landscape. That's actually one activities in which we can build cultural and linguistic bridges, okay? Because linguistic landscape encompasses the aspect of multilingualism. What's the role of each language in the use of signages? Or you can ask your students to translate local text, a song, a poem, proverb, or short stories into English, and then discuss among them what meanings get lost or added. Or you can also create advocacy messages using multiple languages spoken in class. So for my examples in my class, I asked my students to come up with 1,500 to 2,000 word essay in proper APA format, okay, about different intercultural scenarios in the country or in another country. Then I have a statement pertaining to symbols, norms, and culture, and my statement, they are all culture bound, and I want them to expound ideas on that. And there was a time, I think this is pre-pandemic, when as a final project, I asked my students to showcase their creativity and their cultural sensitivity through an intercultural fashion show, but with a twist. Okay, it's related to environment. Um, they are they showcased fashionable outfits created from recycled materials, and their inspirations are the different cultures that we discussed in class, whether continental cultures, regional cultures, subcultures, countercultures, among others. Okay. And if you want to be more academic with your activity, you can ask your students to come up with a research paper on intercultural communication. There are so many things to explore on intercultural communication, communication styles, for example, the nonverbal communication. These are the things that you can explore even in the context of Indonesia. Intercultural competence, communicative competence in Indonesia. Then, another strategy you can do reflect and reframe bias, discuss to your students how English functions as global language, or you can also ask them to identify bias in media and materials, or ask them to come up with reflective journals. Okay. In this activity that I would like to share, this is more on the discussion of prejudice and stereotypes, and I adopted it from an online source. The title of the activity is Choose Your Apprentice. For example, act as an entrepreneur and you're going to hire an engineer. So I always ask for a different item with the label names. Okay, and the last person that they will fire, or the last person remaining, will be the one. Based on their prejudice and stereotypes, they find their engineer. So this is more on reflection about biases, stereotypes, and prejudices. Okay, this is subculture and counterculture, in which one of the items in this activity is I asked them to identify possible stereotypes or biases or misconceptions directed to this culture. Then I think this is the last strategy. You collaborate across borders. So partner with schools from other provinces or countries. In Eastern Visayas State University, we look forward actually to have our students collaborating with your students, with the students of Universitas Diponegoro. Okay? Or you can also use digital storytelling projects to share experiences of diversity. So allow me to share some research conducted in the context of cultural competence, what for them applies. Okay? For example, from classroom to community, in this Vietnamese-based research, the results highlighted the feasibility of community service learning in enhancing cultural competence. So that's a strategy. You can consider community extension services to boost or to develop cultural competence among your students. This is also an ICC training at the high school setting. Okay, so as an institution, you can come up with an ICC training, and in which, according to the participants of this study, they become more mindful of differences, cultural differences, and they gain new insights such as understanding culture block. This is also this one is in from Indonesia, promoting intercultural competence in bilingual programs. I think in this study, it looked into the lecturers' perceptions of strategies to teach and promote intercultural values. And then the findings are include open-minded attitudes, reciprocal interaction, which are, I think, positive in the promotion of intercultural competence. This one is also case study of Indonesian and Korean students. And this one is from the Philippines, fostering through culturally responsive pedagogy. So in this case, as educators, let's try to embed the idea of intercultural communicative competence in our syllabus. Okay. So for our key takeaways, cultural intelligence is a skill set and it's a lifelong competence. Let's remember that, in which it can transform diversity into strength. So our common misconception about diversity, we can be easily misunderstood. Okay, there would be conflicts, issues that may arise. Okay, but with cultural intelligence, if we establish, if we enhance this skill, okay, as a lifelong competence, that diversity will be transformed into strength. Second, language is a cultural bridge that carries values and worldviews. Third, effective teaching is intercultural mediation. We educators are intercultural mediators. We play a very crucial role, okay, in establishing cultural intelligence among our students. So the challenge as well for us educators is to be more sensible and to be a model, culturally intelligent models in the classroom. Empathy is the core of cultural intelligence, and it transforms classrooms into global communities. For implications, in terms of pedagogy, based on the strategies that I mentioned earlier, you can include some intercultural activities in your classes, use authentic text, okay, or from diverse authors from multiple cultures to promote inclusivity, recognize linguistic performance. And for research implications, I think most of us are interested to what are the things to explore in relation to intercultural communicative competence, or the CQ. You can explore English language and literature, integrate in local cultural or integrate local cultural perspectives, or you can examine, for given that most communities or most societies nowadays are strongly engaged with technology, like you can examine how technology can facilitate intercultural dialogue. For example, between Indonesian learners and peers from other countries. Or in terms of literature, given earlier with our first speaker, let's try to link literature with intercultural communication. For example, how text provide us local and global values. Okay? Then examine how CQ and intercultural competence contribute to regional cooperation. This is on policy, I guess. Policy related. Encourage CQ training for our institutions. You might consider encourage CQ training, or for our educators, you may start with an action research, okay, towards policy implementation, to encourage our institutions for CQ training, intercultural dialogue, or collaborative teaching. Or your institution can design policies that value linguistic diversity and partner with institutions abroad to promote cross-cultural exchanges, which I think this is an initial between EBSU and Universitas Diponegoro. And as a personal implication, as educators, again, we model how to live and work in an interconnected world. We have to be culturally intelligent. Okay? By teaching our students cultural empathy, we help build classrooms grounded in understanding, peace, and respect. So, as my closing note, when teachers learn across cultures, they teach for the world. So, thank you so much, everyone, for listening and for your patience.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Mumbai, for the insightful presentation. And well, yeah, I would like to make a small summary about your presentation. So there are some strategies for navigating diversity. Yeah, I think we have to enhance our sense of cultural intelligence, or
Yeah.
CQ. And Professor Mumbai has already offered some strategies for navigating diversity. Just like the first is to fostering linguistic awareness and respect. Second was using inclusive and culturally responsive language. And the third one, integrating culturally diverse context. And from this question and answer session, we have a question. First is for Professor Jenny Advincula. There is a question from Bapak Hadianto. Professor Jenny Advincula, do you think that the concept of eco-poetry is also adapting the idea of eco-justice for marginalized people affected by ecological harm? Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. In the Philippines, we call them, or I guess the world calls them, our indigenous people. And they have their own land, they have their own culture, and they are mostly affected by urbanization. And when we say eco-criticism, it also affects them. So that's right. They're interconnected.
Thank you very much for the answers. And the second one, we have also question, but it is not on the chat room, but here. Okay. Yeah, from for Professor Mumbai, it is about you mentioned that Philippines is one of the nation that has a wide range of local languages. Yeah, a lot of languages in in the Philippines itself, and it is like those Indonesia. How to deal? We want to know how to deal with that in the classroom, because in Indonesia we have also, I think it's also almost the same problem, yeah, because some of the people from indigenous, yeah, especially from indigenous people, they do not know, they cannot speak Indonesian. They only know about only their local language. They never speak Indonesian. And so how to deal with that if there is any case in Philippines.
In the Philippines, we have a bilingual, we have official languages, the Filipino and the use of English. We acknowledge English already as our second language among the different languages in the Philippines. So, with your question, let us first acknowledge the linguistic variety existing in our classroom. I There should be an official language being used in our classroom. In our case, for instance, uh, when just to share my personal experience, I am not a native speaker of Waray language, which is one of the major languages of the Philippines. When I arrived here in the region of Eastern Visayas, I was a Tagalog speaker. I did not know to speak Waray language. But since the official language of the Philippines is Filipino, which is highly dominant Tagalog, so I was able to adapt with the situation in which my teachers adopted to my language, my classmates adopted to my language until such point that I was able to speak even the Waray language. So as educators, we have um, to establish main language in our classroom. If not English, at least the official language of the country which the students must utilize. Okay, before we acknowledge before we acknowledge the core languages of the classroom. I hope I answered that question. Because based on my understanding of the question, there are students in the classroom who do not speak the Bahasa Indonesia, Dr. Retno, if my understanding is correct, uh, because they are from indigenous culture.
Indigenous area and
So how do they communicate, Dr. Retno?
okay,
How do they how do they
they
communicate
usually
with
speak
the educators?
okay, they usually speak the earlier generation mostly do not speak Indonesian, but right now some of the younger generation know about Indonesian, but not as much as we expect as
Yeah.
because but I believe with the technology, with the government programs, there will be uh, that they will know more about Indonesian and uh, well, we have also Indonesian language as the
Yeah.
just like the Philippines, yeah, the national language. But the government also try to still keep maintaining the local language so that they still, they still flourish in the young generation. We try to keep that our local language not to be erased by
Yes,
globalization.
okay. Yes, Dr. Retno, we actually appreciate that because even in our countries, unfortunately, the teaching of our mother tongue, um, the policy on the teaching of our native language has collapsed or has disbanded by the government. That's an unfortunate news for us. Advocates of multilingualisms, and it's really good. It's really we really appreciate the culture of Indonesia, that you really value your own native language. So I think one thing that I would advise with a classroom of diverse ethno-linguistic groups is really just to acknowledge linguistic varieties. As educators, we really have to adjust our minds, not just our bodies, to these varieties, and be patient until such point that our students will be able to adopt, not just in terms of language, but in terms of culture of your classroom or the institution.
Okay. Thank you thank you for Professor Mombe and also Professor Edwin Kula. Um, that was a very insightful presentation, and I believe that the participant will get very big benefit for your presentation. And I hope that this cooperation can run continuously between Indonesia and Philippines, between Universitas Diponegoro and also Eastern Visayas State University in the future. Okay. I think actually I have we have still some questions because of the limited time. Okay, unfortunately, I have to end this presentation, this session. So the times. Thank you very much for both of you. And once again, and I would like to return the time for the Hanifa. Hanifa, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma'am Ratna. Thank you very much for Dr. Prof. Ma Jenny C. Advincula, PhD, and Prof. Christine Down as Mumbai, PhD, for the insightful session given. And thank you to Dr. Ratna Wulandari, Magister of Art, as the moderator who has guided the engaging discussion today. I did also like to thank to all the participants who have participated in this event from the beginning until the end. On behalf of the organizer committee, I would like to say thank you for joining us today and see you on another insightful event. Hopefully, what we learned today will be useful for us. Good afternoon, everyone. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you
very
so
much,
much,
Dr.
Universitas
Diponegoro.
Thank
Diponegoro.
you so
Thank you, Miss
much.
Hanifa. Thank you,
Yeah, see
Dr.
you.
Retno.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
you're
you so
welcome.
much. We
Thank
look
you so
forward
much
to have you as well in our university
Yeah, we
with a
hope so.
similar
Yeah,
activity.
we hope so. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, see you. Thank you very much once again. Joseph, thank you very much, Joseph.